Merry Christmas.
Thank you. Merry Christmas to you, Sophia.
Yeah, thank you for inviting us to share the day with you. I had a beautiful meal earlier. Thank you so much for the time.
Right.
So, what a year it has been, 2017, especially politically speaking.
Yes.
I think one of the most heightened moments we've seen in recent history.
Yes.
What do you speak about 2017 if you were to reflect on it?
I think that 2017 was a fairly challenging year for the people of Kenya. One that the year happened to have been an electioneering year. So they have gone through one of the longest election campaign periods in the Kenya's history. And the other one is that the year was also very difficult economically for the people of Kenya. We've seen the cost of living rise up very sharply.
Yes.
We've seen also the unemployment rate increase to a fairly high rate in the country. We've seen also Kenyans being killed wantonly by the police officers. And finally, we're crowning it with mass failure of our children in the just concluded exams. So I don't think there is really much to celebrate about in 2017.
Right.
Yeah.
And as difficult, yeah, especially for you politically speaking. But let's begin with that electioneering cycle. And the 8th of August election happened. You alleged it was rigged. The Supreme Court at least annulling it on the basis of irregularities and illegalities. And then ordering another election. And then you pulled out of that one. In hindsight, do you regret that boycott, seeing as things appear to have settled down?
Not at all, Sophia. First, we had, of course, expressed our fears right from the very beginning.
Right.
That arrangements were not properly in place. We complained about Electoral Commission. We went into negotiations. They only partially met what we wanted, because you say that the Electoral Commission was rotten from the core, particularly the staff of the Electoral Commission. But Jubilee was not interested, because their intention was to rig the elections. And that's why they agreed to replace the commissioners, but not the staff at the Electoral Commission, which had been responsible for the rigging of 2013 elections.
Right.
So we went into elections with a lot of misgivings, and our fears were probably confirmed by the outcome of the elections. But many things which are not known to people happened, which were criminal, in fact. Two of our election experts, advisors, consultants, one American, one Canadian, were arrested by the police at night from their hotel in Westlands and deported. They, of course, reported the matter, the American to White House, alert, and the American ambassador was informed. He went to the airport, and then they said they were deporting them. And the Canadian High Commissioner was also at the airport. The American government did not protest that deportation. We had paid these people very expensively to come and advise our election team here.
Right.
And what happened is the Jubilee, on the other hand, is having Cambridge Analytica as their consultants.
Yeah.
And they were saying these people were just deported, that they didn't have work permits. Through no fault of their own, we had applied for work permit for them. Otherwise, 4 other Ghanaians, experts.
And I remember we covered a little bit of that at the time. And so a lot,
the Ghanaians.
Yes.
Yeah, the Ghanaians were also just arrested at the airport and deported.
So a lot happened around that time. But again, back to the question.
I'm coming to that.
Yes.
We don't regret having pulled out, because we did not stand a chance at all winning those elections. because the Electoral Commission was under the full charge of Jubilee. You see, Mr. What was his name?
The CEO?
The CEO. Chiloba. And was supposed to have gone out. But he was the one who was giving instructions to the staff at the commission. The chairman of the commission himself said on a live television interview 8 days to the elections that he was unable to deliver a free and fair electoral process.
And then he later said,
yeah, exactly.
All was well.
Because he was pushed by Jubilee to say everything was fine. And then one of the commissioners also resigned, Akombe, and blew off the lead.
But at the end of the day, Honorable Odinga, we are a country of rules. We have institutions, we have systems. The election happened, you contested it. At the time, the first 8th of August presidential, you were granted reprieve by the Supreme Court. Yeah, despite all the issues arising on the 26th election, that same Supreme Court upheld that election. The president has since been sworn in.
Listen to me.
Yes.
The Supreme Court that upheld the elections of 26th October is not the same Supreme Court that nullified the elections of 8th August on the 1st of September.
What do you mean?
This Supreme Court has been blackmailed. It has been intimidated. Remember they were called crooks, wakora. They are umeiba ushindi wangu. Nikirudi wataniona, and so on. And they even shot the security guard of the deputy head of the Supreme Court.
So you allege everything and everyone has been compromised?
Completely. That was not, this was completely Supreme Court working under duress.
But then what is the solution? Is it, when you talk about swearing in and going that direction, isn't that working outside the same laws you've talked about and fought for? The democracy of this country, when you go outside it, are you not undermining
not at all.
The very same things?
There's a very important clause in that constitution. Article 1 of the constitution talks about the people. If everything else has gone haywire, if the government has become rogue and is basically trying to muzzle the voices and kill institutions, the people have got a right to revert to Article 1 of the Constitution and take power on themselves and exercise it. See, I'm saying the Supreme Court nullified the fraudulent announcement that Uhuru had won. That is what was nullified by the Supreme Court.
Right.
They did not nullify the results of August 8th, the elections. Because remember, they gave an order to the IBC to open the server, allow access to the server, and they refused to open the server. Yeah. Completely. So they're in contempt of the same court. Up to now, they're still in contempt.
But when
what has happened is we have managed to open that server and access it. And we've got the results of that server.
And what do the results?
It showed that we won the elections.
With what percentage of the numbers?
Over 1 million votes.
So you got what?
I'm not giving the figures, but I'm just telling you we won.
And so how did you open the servers?
You just access it.
How? You're not an IEBC official.
You can access it through what you call whistleblowers.
So people within IEBC are working with you?
Whistleblowers.
Yeah.
And the whistleblowers are protected by our laws.
Right.
Okay? So I'm just telling you that we have had access to that server and we know that we won. And that's why they're refusing. Just look at it. They have already opened the server for 26th of October.
But the contradiction is this, Mheshimiwa. On one hand, you're now saying those numbers of the 8th of August election stand. Yet the argument Senior Counsellor Orengo made in court during the petition was that those numbers don't count because the process was flawed. So as you said, the judges agreed with that argument. So how can we on one hand say those numbers don't count because the process is flawed, and then now say we have those numbers and we are relying and staying by those numbers?
What Orengo said, the fraudulent numbers, the numbers which had been manipulated, did not count. Orengo did not dispute the actual numbers. That's why he asked the court to order that the IBC allows access to the server.
Okay.
And the IBC refused to allow access.
So which fraudulent numbers? Because the idea was that the final result doesn't count because the process is flawed.
What we did, we went down and we gave the actual figures, which had authentically been brought from the polling stations. And they differed drastically with the figures which IBC was releasing from the Bomas of Kenya. So that is what the fraudulent figures which were being released by IBC from Bomas of Kenya. The one through the algorithm, and the one Orengo said did not count. Orengo did not at any time dispute the actual results which were in the server.
Yeah.
So, and what we're trying to say is that we have had access to that server, and we now know the figures. So we're saying that we won the elections.
But that has since been overtaken by another election.
Which is, of course, it's a nullity. We don't recognize it. We pulled out. So it became an Uhuru versus a Kenyatta election. Uhuru running against Kenyatta and beating Kenyatta. And thereafter, it became now Uhuru versus the turnout. Now he was running against the turnout, and he beat the turnout twice, because the actual turnout, as evidenced by the kits, KIMS kits, people who are biometrically identified, it's only 3.5 million. But they announced that he got 7.4 million. So double the figure.
So you're talking about now having these results. So what happens now that you have these results that you say are the genuine figures, and we have a president who is in government according to the Constitution?
In government illegal in our view, because we don't recognize those elections.
But the Supreme Court has upheld that election. So how do we move from here? Explain to me and to Kenyans how we move from a place of we have a government in power. In which system and in what mechanism do you then move from having these numbers and this swearing-in ceremony?
Sophia, if you don't accept that there is a crisis, then you're living in a dream world.
Okay.
This country is facing the biggest political crisis that it has been in since independence. It is worse than 2007, except that people are not killing each other. It's only police who are killing people, okay? But the kind of anger you can see is palpable all over the country. The other day I was in Vihiga, and you could see people in tears telling me I must take the Bible. I was in Bungoma the same day, the same thing.
I saw a woman bring a Bible to you today in church.
Yes, it's true, you saw it.
Yeah.
In Mombasa, they came with the Bible to the podium and insisted, wakasema ati leo hii tunamwapisha. So that is the feeling in 2/3 of the country. It's only 1/3 the country can say is happy.
So you'll be sworn in as the president of the People's Assembly? Because in what other fashion or mechanism would that happen?
We will cross that bridge when we reach it.
Because your followers, and you have in a statement, you expressed regret over this swearing in. There's a lot of back and forth. There's not been clarity. It's as if NASA, led by yourself, are playing it by the ear. There's really no strategy. Yesterday, a timetable was to be released on the swearing in ceremony. What happened?
You see, what I'm trying to say is that NASA is very clear.
Is it?
And they've said, what you said is that we are allowing room for discussions. We are going to go ahead and do it on the 12th.
So why didn't was a timetable released yesterday? What happened?
The timetable is going to be released. That's not a big deal. What is happening is we are establishing people's assemblies around the country. And these people's assemblies are basically going to create an agenda for the National People's Assembly, which will deal with the issues at stake.
Yeah.
And what we have identified, of course, we are not restricted to what we are talking about. One is electoral justice. because you're saying that this electoral injustice must be fixed. If it is not fixed, in 2022,
Yeah.
we're just back to where we are.
And we'll talk about electoral justice, sir. We'll talk about the People's Assembly. Let me take you back to the swearing in, because on 2 occasions, that ceremony has been postponed. Initially, it was if Uhuru Kenyatta is sworn in, you'll be sworn in on the same day on a different ceremony. It didn't happen. Then Jamhuri Day didn't happen. Then yesterday, a timetable didn't happen.
When?
Yesterday, a timetable was to be released. That did not happen. So there's a sense of frustration that's growing and fatigue from your supporters, feeling as if there's really no clear way forward. It's as if there's no...
That is in your mind.
I am asking a question that I've seen many people take to Twitter to say, but isn't it, if for you, you were looking forward to do something for your supporters, and each time it keeps being changed, wouldn't you?
No, supporters understand.
Do they?
Those who made the announcement actually explained that we were going to do this, but we were petitioned by some diplomats and the religious leaders and business leaders to allow time for negotiations. And we said that if that would help to avoid a crisis, it's good listening to them.
So has Uhuru Kenyatta reached out to you, the president?
He has not. He has not. That's what we will say. But
Yeah.
we will say that we don't want to appear to be people who are unreasonable. These people were on their knees talking to us.
But they've not delivered so far. At least there's no solution.
So we will not be then held responsible for subsequent consequences, because at least we have shown that we are not people who are unreasonable. Okay? So if you can give dialogue a chance, you give it a chance. And we've shown that we are ready to give it a chance and talk. But then what you've received is a contempt card. And that's why we are saying that now we will not be held responsible for whatever we're doing, because their response has been that of blackmail, intimidation, that if you swear in, you're committing treason, punishable by death, or by life imprisonment, and so on and so forth, which doesn't help.
So how does this dialogue look like? If the president calls you, you have a conversation, perhaps talks about creating a position in his government for you, or what is this dialogue? What is it you want to happen?
We are not talking about tokenism. You said we're not interested in Usumkati. We really want to talk about very fundamental issues. And we gave this agenda to the team that came to plead with us to postpone our swearing in. And we mentioned 5 subjects. 1 is electoral justice. 2 is the issue of police reforms, because we don't have a police force. We have a killer team, criminals in uniform. 3, judicial independence arising from the 26th of October elections. Then 4 is restructuring and strengthening the coalition, or devolution. Sorry, not coalition, devolution.
Right.
And 5 is the issue of restructuring of the executive.
Right. Okay. Because one of the other issues that then arises is a lot of talk from some of your supporters is that there's a judge somewhere that will swear you in, and that in the hours leading and following that, there will be a lot of heightened activities, and some of that is that during this swearing-in ceremony, you will seek allegiance from the armed forces. Is that a...
Those are speculations.
What is going... Then paint for us a picture of what will happen.
I don't want to be in that direction.
How will you be... Who will swear you in?
I don't want to speculate.
Do you not know how it will all unfold?
If it is of no consequence, then of course the government should not be worried.
Yeah.
Because what is then just taking a Bible and swearing? You can do it yourself. Why is it of such extreme importance to the government? to the extent that they're threatening people with treason.
So you think the government is rattled?
They know there will be consequences. And I don't want to speculate about those consequences.
So
Okay.
under which law will you be sworn in?
Under Article 1 of the Constitution. Yes.
Sovereign power?
Yes.
But it doesn't talk about swearing in a parallel president.
No, those are now details. But when the people meet...
You're not giving me much of information around this swearing in.
Because I don't want to get too much details.
Huh?
I'll give you more details after the swearing in.
After the swearing in.
Yes.
You've talked about the electoral justice, and let's focus on that for a moment, because you have been a champion and very heavily involved in some of the reforms we've already seen in the past, whether it's changes in law, your coalition and party has been heavily involved, whether it's the personnel change, the ouster of the other commissioners in the IEBC, you spearheaded that. So a lot has happened in as far as electoral reforms, but you maintain we need that electoral justice. So what is that thing that needs to happen that will satisfy Raila Odinga?
You see, the thing is this, that it is not acceptable that the people should waste their times on the queues the whole day in sunshine, in rain, to cast their ballots. At the end of the day, after that is done, the counting is done, results are announced at the polling station. But ultimately, different results are announced at the constituency tallying center.
Right.
And other results are announced at the national tallying center. So that the computers are the ones which now elect the leaders, what we call the computer chicks. This is not, it's not right.
Computer chicks.
The computer.
Yes.
So it is not fair. It's not really fair. You saw what happened.
So what is that needs to happen?
What happened in 2007?
Yeah.
And you know the consequences.
Right.
People are saying that Raila is a perennial loser. Raila has never lost. It's only been rigged. Okay?
So will electoral justice be seen to have happened in your eyes if you become president?
Not that.
So what needs to happen?
You see, what I'm saying is that either we agree that we are going to run this country in accordance with the wish of the people, or we go our ways. See? People cannot be ruled by leadership that is imposed, because then it's like colonialism. You see? And that is not acceptable.
So you're saying to achieve electoral justice, people need to talk? Haven't we talked before?
No, I'm saying let the ballot elect the leaders.
And you're convinced so far it's not?
Not only me. Why did the Supreme Court nullify the results?
Which takes us back to where we've started. Then what is that needs to happen so that you, your supporters, and everybody in general?
You see, in most of established democracies, usually you find that the contestants don't complain about the outcome in terms of rigging. Why? Because there really is no rigging. The results are the results themselves. In other words, the ballot as cast is what is counted and is announced. There's no manipulation of results deliberately by the staff of the Electoral Commission. Okay? And this is the kind of reforms that we need to introduce in our country, so that you have a situation where there is too much transparency. And so, for example, in Mozambique, the political parties nominate agents, the staff who basically are appointed, so they are balanced in the commission.
So each has interests.
Yes,
Doesn't it take you back to the same position where one is, looking at the interest of this one, this other side interest of the other, you end up with the same scenario? The
only election which was actually repeated to be free and fair in this country,
right,
the 2002 elections. And there we had commissioners who were appointed by the opposition and 50% by the government. You remember the IPPG, and that is the commission that then appointed the staff. and the staff were also appointed transparently. And therefore, they were cross-checking each other.
Okay.
Because there's really nobody in this country who is, or this world, who is neutral. Even if you give the Pope the ballot,
he'll vote for someone.
He'll vote for someone. Okay.
Yeah.
All this.
So that's what you suggest. Your proposal going forward is opposition is allowed to have that power.
Even not opposition only, both sides.
Yes.
Nominate the commissioners.
Okay.
But also you restructure it.
Yes.
Okay. So that, and also the staff of the Electoral Commission. So you give the commissioners the real powers to appoint the staff. Like what we have now is a staff which is more or less political, and they're actually serving certain vested interests. And we mentioned some of those members of the staff. Even Chebukati, in his own memo to what is his name?
To Chiloba.
Chiloba.
Yeah, and he was accused of being aligned to you. You remember the deputy president even said he was having night meetings at a televised interview. So
that was basically make-believe, because he knew exactly what he was talking about. But he knew how they were all both compromised by the company that was providing the ICT, the Sapramorpho.
Yeah.
We know the connections, how Sapramorpho came to compromise most of the staff of the IBC.
So that is how electoral justice, in your view, is achieved?
Electoral justice is achieved if there is what you call parity. In other words, if there is fairness in terms of voting, counting and tallying and announcement of results. Okay? So that then every vote counts. That's what we're talking about.
Let's go back.
This is what Kenyans have been denied consecutively. And we are saying that if this is not rectified, in 2022, maybe 10 or 20% of the voters will turn up. And then the incumbent will get 98% of those votes. That is what now is happening in a number of African countries. So it is not a theory. It is a practical thing, as you call electoral autocracy. So there are countries in Africa, people don't even bother to go and vote. And this is quietly now coming to the Eastern African region.
Okay.
Yes.
Let's go back and talk a little bit more on the swearing in. Because the big question, let's say you do it, go through with it, you're sworn in whatever fashion it will happen, as you have decided not to divulge more details. But what do you tell your supporters in terms of what will change in their lives? So Raila Odinga has sworn himself in. How does the quality of their life change?
I think we'll get there, because this will be the first time that this has happened in this country. And we don't want to preempt so many things right now. That's why you can see that we are very economical with our words.
And one would argue it's because you have not figured out how to go about this, and it is not talking about it as the issue.
You're not going to force me to say what I don't want to say now. Okay.
Do you not fear you're losing momentum? Because we've come long electioneering period, a lot of your supporters very energized. That one is annulled. They feel, yes, they've been given a second chance. Then you pull out. It's like they've been pushed back and forth and all of the postponement. Are you not losing momentum?
Kenyans are saying that they are not now just saying forgetting and moving on.
Right.
The Kenyans are stubborn, and they will not lose out. They will not lose momentum. Momentum is there.
Yes.
In fact, if anything else, people are telling me you're delaying us. You can see that people are very impatient with me.
Right.
That there's no need to talk to anybody. Let's go ahead. You see, and you can see when people are talking about secession from Kenya, it's a very dangerous talk.
Yeah.
But you cannot dismiss it out of hand. It is basically an expression of frustrations of the people. which is putting into question the Project Kenya. That the Project Kenya is not working well enough for other people in this country. Those is not something that you can sweep under the carpet. You must put it on the table and discuss it.
Yeah.
Okay? How do we resolve these issues?
Yes. And
why are people not happy in Kenya to the extent that senior people, governors, senators, MCAs, members of parliament, are saying, no, we don't want to have anything to do with Kenya.
We're talking about the People's Assemblies, and we have that just ratified in 14 counties out of 47. Doesn't that show that there's not too many of these counties and people that are behind what you're pushing for?
It's not true. Some other counties which are on the way to ratifying. You see, Rome was not built in a day. But even in some other counties where we don't have majority of MCAs, there are a number of people who are not happy. So you don't just have to be people to be represented by the county assemblies. People will be represented directly. So the people will come from all over Kenya, can I assure you, from all 47 counties.
Okay.
Okay.
There have been proposals around expanding the executive, saying that the nature of our presidential elections, the do or die sense of it, is something that needs to be resolved by expanding the executive. And when we look back at the draft proposals around the Constitution before the promulgation in 2010, each of those drafts had the position of Prime Minister and Deputy Prime Ministers. And that's something we know you also used to talk about quite a bit. But whilst you were in government as Prime Minister, and when that final draft was taken to a referendum and passed and is the current Constitution, that clause was removed, the PM and DPM. And yet at the time one would have argued you were in a prime position to be able to ensure we have that kind of an expanded executive. Do you regret that?
Not at all. You see, Sophia, you need to know that I was a very strong supporter of the Bomas draft constitution.
Right.
The Bomas draft constitution, in my view, is what reflected the wishes of the people of Kenya. Because it was prepared after lengthy deliberations and consultations. So it was the best, and it was a hybrid. What actually became a deal breaker at Bomas was the chapter on executive and the chapter on devolution. That is what the other group did not like. That's why they walked out of us at Bomas.
Yes.
And that's why we then opposed the Kilifi draft which they brought to Parliament. And we successfully opposed it. Now, when this team went to Naivasha, it appeared again that this was going to be a deal breaker. These other forces were still not very happy with the hybrid structure of the executive.
Right.
Those who were so much for the centralized power. And that's why they pushed it. We agreed to compromise, because we said, let us deal with the 80% of the constitution, which is good. And then sometime in the future, we will bring that back into the table.
Yeah.
Okay?
Some say it's because you thought you were going to become president. You were almost sure that in the next election you'd become president, and so you did not want to have that scenario.
Those are speculations. I was not even in the country. I was in Singapore.
But you were the prime minister with a lot of gravitas, a lot of influence.
But you see, we had also the president and his people. You remember, in Bomas, we pushed that because we were the delegates there at Bomas. In Naivasha, there's a very small team that was just negotiating. Just a few members of parliament who were sitting in Naivasha and brokering deals. And you ask yourself, why did we not go for the bigger devolved units? The issue became the Nakuru, was the deal breaker, where it was going to be and which other districts were going to be there. Okay. So there have been a lot of vested interests. But if we went back now and looked at the Bomas draft, or the original Bomas draft, in my view, that will solve this matter. That's why we've said we bring back to the table the issue of restructuring and strengthening devolution and restructuring of the executive. This is one of the 5 agendas.
Yeah.
I told you electoral justice, police reforms, judicial independence, the restructuring and strengthening of devolution, and restructuring of the executive.
Of the executive.
Yeah.
And do you believe at the time when the parliamentary system were running for president, you'd also run for member of parliament, that was a better setup in line especially of the situation we find ourselves in now, that you're the main leadership, opposition, but you're outside parliament, so that a lot of their work and agenda sometimes appears to be slowed down because there's all this consultation from within the house with you outside.
Yeah, that is why I'm saying that the hybrid system, because that hybrid system provides for running as a prime minister,
Yes.
meaning that you're representing a constituency, and then you become a prime minister who is then the head of the government.
Right.
Yes.
Okay, so that is how it works. I want us to continue this conversation and talk a little bit more about what's going on in NASA, and perhaps we can take a walk.